Mary redeemed a $50,000 cash prize playing Chumba Casino this year.
I was only playing for fun, so winning this was a dream come true.
Chumba Casino is America's #1 social casino experience. It's serious fun. With over 80 casino-style games to choose from, you too could win life-changing amounts of cash. Be like Mary. Log on to ChumbaCasino.com and give them a whirl. That's ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details. The voice in the preceding commercial was not the actual voice of a winner.
Hey, it's Matt from the Direct-to-Video Connoisseur here. Thanks again for listening to the DTVC podcast. Before we jump in, I wanted to quickly let you know that my new novel, A Girl and a Gun, is available on Amazon now, both on Kindle and paperback. It follows Justin, a successful writer whose past as a scriptwriter for a fetish porn site comes back to haunt him and threatens to derail his career. As he's picking up the pieces, he gets an opportunity to make a movie called A Girl and a Gun with a rom-com star. Justin may have bitten off more than he can chew, though, because she's notoriously difficult to work with. If you're interested, you can find the link on our webpage, along with the link to my first novel, Chad in Accounting. If you have any questions, please reach out, and I thank you for the support. Now, on to the podcast. Direct-to-Video Connoisseur. As always, this is Matt here, and I am joined once again by a very special guest. We have Jacob Gustafson, author of Awful Awesome Action Volume 1, and then, of course, his newest book, Awful Awesome Horror Volume 2, just came out recently as we're doing this recording. Welcome back, Jacob.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I was finally able to get Horror Volume 2 off the ground, and I'm actually in the process of Amazon just recently allowed us publishers to create hardback editions. So yeah. I believe Horror Volume 2 has a hardback edition already ready. And then I think I got to do some fixes to two of the other ones. So pretty soon I will have all 4 of my books in hardback as well, just for fun, just because I thought, well, gee, that's neat. Why not? Why not do it?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I saw that was an option because I've got the two self-published novels that I have, and I was like, man, maybe I should do it, but I haven't gotten around to formatting them yet for that, so I'm still in the paperback stage. But it is kind of cool to have like a hardcover copy of the book. Yeah,
for sure. I just was sort of tickled by the novelty of doing it, and for anybody who wants to have what I presume of being a more hardy edition, like it'll hopefully take more abuse than the paperbacks do. So.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that's great about I think for anybody who's listening who doesn't have your books, they're great guides. I think, for example, Awful Awesome Action is a really great one because you get into kind of the nether reaches of the action genre where I mean you go into those IMDb pages and maybe they've got a few critic reviews, and so I think it's a really great resource in that sense that people just kind of dig in and just man, what do I want to watch that now. I think the other thing that's been great too is it seems like more of the ones that you covered in Volume 1 that weren't available on anything, or use VHS maybe is the best way you could get them if you could get them that way. Now it seems like Tubi's picking up more of them. Yes.
Yeah. I was just going to say my Awful Awesome guides are essentially they've become a guide to what to watch and what not to watch on Tubi.
Yeah, which is amazing because I mean I think like the film we're going to be talking about here in a minute here, Young Rebels by Amir Shervan. for the longest time, you couldn't get any of his stuff, and then Samurai Cop was starting to kind of inch out there as like a DVD. I think Cinema Epic put it out, and it had that cult status, and so you could at least get that one. But the other ones, it was like if you weren't finding a VHS copy, then you're out of luck.
Right, and I think I could be misspeaking, but I'm pretty sure one of his films, Gypsy, was never. It was, at least I don't think it was ever released in the United States. It may have been released in a foreign market, but I don't think that one was ever released. Cinema Epoch, they bought all of the Shervan films. When they picked up Samurai Cop, they picked up all of them, and so all of a sudden, here were these other films that no one had gotten to see, that were very, very hard to find. Like I said, in particular, Killing American Style and Gypsy and Young Rebels. I mean, Young Rebels was also another one that may have had a VHS release in the United States, but I don't think it was ever put out on DVD. Samurai Cop was. Samurai Cop was released by, I want to say it was Media Blasters. They put it out on DVD, and it had a Joe Bob Briggs commentary on it. So that one actually did at least make the jump, but the other ones were super obscure, very, very hard to get. Hollywood Cop had a really low quality DVD release, but the other ones were more or less lost and had never been seen. So it's kudos to Cinema Epoch for not only picking them all up, but actually restoring them. I mean, Young Rebels, which we're going to talk about on Tubi, looks absolutely killer. It looks so good.
Yeah. So that's a good point. I didn't realize that, but that's a good point about Samurai Cop, that I didn't see the Cinema Epic version. I saw the Media Blaster one, because I remember the Joe Bob Briggs commentary where he referred to the bacon grease scene. I think he called it bacon grease foo, or how he says different foos at the end. And so I did, because I remember when Cinema Epoch was when they did like kind of a midnight screening series throughout the U.S. when they got the rights to it, and they had put out a film called Nipples and Palm Trees that an indie director had made. It was kind of about this guy from the East Coast who's sort of the crazy happenings when he moves out to L.A. and all the the women he encounters. And I thought it was a really good movie when I reviewed it for the site, because the director had asked if I could, and I was talking about how much I liked it, and I kind of liked the juxtaposition of the East Coast and West Coast that they had in there and all of that. And he was like, oh, hey, because I mentioned in the review that I was in the Boston area. He's like, hey, they're going to be showing Samurai Cop in a theater there at a midnight showing. You should go check it out. But of course, where I was living, I didn't have a car, and I couldn't, the trains in Boston don't run that late. So I would have had to get a hotel, and I just, the price of all of it.
Right. That's a little ridiculous, right?
Yeah. So I ended up having to, I couldn't do it, but it would have been a lot of fun to kind of see that in a midnight theater showing kind of thing. But that was, I guess, when Cinema Epoch, when they got a hold of Samurai Cop, and like you said, when they started releasing the other one. So this would have been, I guess like the early 2010s. And then, they kind of started working from there. But it's been fantastic to be able to go on Tubi and see all of these.
Right. And it was the guy who runs Cinema Epoch, Gregory
Hatanaka.
Yeah, Hatanaka. He also directed, crowdfunded and directed Samurai Cop 2. Because they had the rights to it, and I did get to go to a special screening of that with the cast and crew there, which was quite a bit of fun. A friend of mine is actually in Samurai Cop 2, and that's kind of like in an odd way how we met. But anyway, and that was a total trip to get to see all these very interesting stars all in one place. And let me tell you, not that we're talking about Samurai Cop, but the two main stars of Samurai Cop, the two cops, they are both ridiculously tall.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Like really, like they're huge. Like both of them. There's pictures of me. I'm 6'1" and they tower over me. Both of them. I look like a tiny doll person compared to both of them. They're both like probably over 6'5". I mean, they're ridiculously tall.
Wow. Yeah, and Robert Zadar was tall like that too.
Yeah. Yeah. He was, and he was supposed to be in Samurai Cop 2, but unfortunately he passed away before they started filming. But my friend was in contact with him quite a bit during pre-production. The director basically said, "Hey, can you deal with Robert? He has questions, and we're kind of busy. So would you be willing to talk to him?" And he said, "Sure." And so he gave Robert Zadar his phone number, and Zadar called him like a lot, and just talked to him about all kinds of stuff. But he didn't know who Robert Zadar was.
Yeah.
He he needed me to introduce. So I was like, "No, you don't understand." I was like, "Oh my gosh, you've been talking to Robert Zadar? That's amazing." And he said, "Yeah, yeah." He calls me at odd hours, and I think he was living out in Iowa, and was calling my buddy up during all sorts of strange hours with questions and ideas, and said that he was a really lovely guy.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it for sure. And I mean, Hot Tanaka seems great too. I mean, I've done some cinema epoch films for the site that are kind of just sort of they'll send me emails. They're the distribution company will send emails from time to time saying, hey, this is what new films we've got coming out. And of course, because all of their stuff's on Tubi, they don't need to do screeners. They just say, here are the titles. If you want to review some,
Mm-hmm.
we'd be appreciative. And I know that like Shane Ryan Reed does a lot of stuff with them, and so
Yeah,
um,
that's my friend.
oh, that's
He's
your oh,
yeah,
nice.
yeah, I hang out with him regularly. Yeah.
Oh, he's great. Yeah, some of the stuff that he's been doing with Cinema Epoch. If you ever get to tell him that I really like the stuff that he's been doing with them.
Yeah,
It,
he's working with them a lot over the last 6 to 8 months. They've been making a lot of films, and he's
yeah,
been helping out either as an actor or a producer or whatever. Like he's also a director. He's made a bunch of films himself as well. But yeah, they're cranking out content for Tubi right now.
yeah. It's really great stuff. I'm kind of like, cause I a lot of times I'll fit theirs, and I tend to do like an independent film, like one indie film a month, kind of, or two a month, and I kind of put them on my Tuesday uh, blocks when I'm not having a podcast uploaded. So yeah, right now I've got a couple others. Like I've got Nemesis from Shogun Films, and then another one, When Darkness Falls. I just recorded a podcast with the screenwriter for that, Tom Joliffe. And so like probably the next one will probably be another Cinema Epoch one that and yeah, I think the thing with his work, with the stuff that he directs, some of it's like more on the extreme side, which I'm not, I don't begrudge him for that. I think if you're making a movie, make the kind of movie that you really feel like you want to make. But sometimes for me, I'm like, I don't know if I have the stomach to watch some of those ones that he's put out. But so like being able to appreciate him in these Cinema Epoch films has been kind of nice, to be able to be like, yeah, you know what, I can still kind of appreciate his work that way.
Well, the funny thing is you would never know that those are the types of films that he directs.
Right.
He's a great guy. He's a lot of fun to talk to. Has a lot of great stories, and he's a truly passionate about cinema. I mean, he's always buying Criterion movies, and he's very passionate about cinema. So it's interesting that his career has been of directing so many very transgressive films, because he himself he's not a transgressive person, like he's fun. Like you would think that he'd be some misanthropic jerk or something, and that's not him at all. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that fun aspect does seem to come through in these films that he's doing, like with Gregory Hatanaka, where he's just like there was one that I reviewed that he did called Choke, where
Yeah, I've
his
seen that one. Yeah.
yeah, I mean his manic energy. I think for me, the one thing that issue with the movie I had was it kind of had that same kind of trope of the older guy with the younger woman kind of
Hmm.
thing, that sometimes it's just hard to kind of when you're to kind of get away from that. But by the same token, it was just like his manic energy as the killer in that film. It definitely, I could see how he would be someone who could have fun, because I mean he just like I think I said when I reviewed it that he would be a perfect Joker. If you were doing a Batman movie, like he could really bring it as a Joker. And a lot of times I think the best baddies are people who are not anything like that in real life.
Have you ever done a podcast with him?
No, I
Oh,
haven't.
you should. You
Yeah,
should. You should hit him up and try to get him on. He's super like I said, he's very passionate, very articulate about film,
yeah.
and a really pleasant guy. Like he's not whatever assumptions you might bring to the table based on his filmography, they won't hold true.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Like I said, this kind of thing kind of happens sometimes with screeners or with movies where it's like there's another director. His name's James Cullen Bressak, who has done like now he's done like some Seagal movies. He does a Bruce Willis movie, but when he was starting out, he did a movie called Hate Crime. That was about like these neo Nazis who invade a Jewish family's house, and it's like really really disturbing. And he made the film as a Jewish person himself. He was kind of making it as a sort of reaction to anti-Semitism that he's encountered. So I get why he made the movie, but for me it was just too extreme for me to cover it, even when he was sending emails asking different people to review it. So then when he did like a Seagal movie, I kind of really I was like, I got to do that one right away, to just be able to say like, okay, I did one of your movies. Like I kind of appreciated too that he had made it that far too, that he was doing Seagal movies. And I know
To be able to work with Seagal and Bruce Willis, he must be like a saint or something, because they're both notoriously difficult
right.
to work with. Oh my gosh, I feel like I would be incredibly intimidated to work with either one of them because of how just how hard they're, especially Seagal, is supposed to be to work with.
Yeah. I don't know because it seemed like it was kind of like the Seagal movie he did was called Beyond the Law. It's the one with like DMX and not the old DMX one that he did, but a newer one. And then Johnny Mesner is like Johnny Mesner's the guy doing the heavy lifting essentially, because it's Seagal, right? He doesn't do the heavy
Right.
lifting.
No.
But also Zach Ward, who played Scott Farkas in A Christmas Story. He's in the film as well, and I guess the two of them work together. He works with James Cullen Bressak, so I think that was somebody he knew that he could kind of lean on as well. And I think that's something that probably people do when they work with Seagal is you get some people that that you can work with that probably know exactly what you're doing, and it's easy to probably lean on them. But that film, he did have to. Part of it is him as a director. I think also the screenwriter. They had to really move things around to kind of fit the things that Seagal expects out of a movie, right? Because Seagal can't be beat in a fight.
Right.
But he was the baddie, right? So, well, how does the baddie not get beat in a fight? So they had to come up with a creative way for Johnny Mesner to lose but not lose, so that Seagal wins but loses but doesn't. I don't. Yeah, it was really interesting, and so yeah, the Bruce Willis film I haven't seen yet that he did. I think it was like him and a couple other directors like did like kind of almost like a few movies within a all in the same year. So I don't even know how that would have worked. It would be interesting to kind of find out how that was, but it's almost like they had like maybe a stable of a few directors and they just like kind of had one do a movie with Bruce, then another do a movie, because we know now with him with his health issues that I think there were some producers that he was working with. They were trying to get him in as many movies as possible, knowing that he'd have to stop at some point. And so
Right.
They're trying to get him over the finish line. So probably, it's possible that seeing, them seeing Bressak do the film with Seagal, they thought, well, okay, he's the kind of person that could do a movie like this that we need to do to get, Willis over the finish line here on this. Yeah, it's like there's kind of a period in like 2020, I think, or 2021 where Willis is in like 3 or 4 movies. And I think like Bressak might have done a couple. There's another director that did a couple, but they're all kind of like in the woods with a similar cast.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting moment in cinema history right now when you have something like Tubi that is buying up tons and tons and tons of stuff. It's really opened the door for a lot of independent filmmakers to get their stuff out there, to get it seen. Tubi seems to be like the place, and there's probably going to be other ones. They call that AVOD, advertising based video on demand, and we're going to see a lot more of that, which means that my gosh, when you jump into Tubi, like there's just so much out there. It's like there's just like an ocean of, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to be worth my time,
Yeah.
what's not going to be worth my time. And I've gotten my fingers burned a lot, of course, with Tubi. It's funny, Amazon was the place, and then all of a sudden now it's like, nope, Tubi's the place. That's where you go to get your fix. And hopefully uh, with my books, it'll help guide people. I feel like Horror Volume 2, it has deeper cuts. There's definitely more obscure films in there, and the same will hold true for Action and Sci-Fi Volume 2. They're definitely more obscure films. But at this point, I mean, what even is really obscure anymore, right? Like, when you can fire up Tubi and you can watch every single one of Amir Shervan's movies, which had been previously completely unavailable and were nearly impossible to find, like it begs the question of, like, what is even obscure anymore?
Yeah.
It's more like, can you sift through the mountain and find the gold?
Yeah.
Because nothing's really obscure. I mean, you can fire up, you can do a quick search and you can find stuff on one streaming platform or another. And then when we're talking about, awful awesome type movies, it's more than likely gonna be on Tubi. And I think that's amazing. I think it's great because the whole reason why I wrote these books was because I felt like the films, some of them, not all of them, most of them, not all of them, they should be seen. Like, they should be watched. And I think that Amir Shervan's films should be watched. They are ridiculous and very, very cheap. But they're incredibly endearing and fun and surprising, and have kind of like a vibe unique to their own. The film we're going to talk about tonight, Young Rebels, for people who are really big fans of Samurai Cop, yes, there's more. People end up discovering The Room, and then they're like, I want more, and it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, that's kind of all there is. But when it comes to Shervan, we do have a small handful of films. He was an immigrant from Iran. He came to the United States and started making films at some point during his life. Now, the interesting thing about Shervan is that in Iran, he was a filmmaker as well. So there's like a lot of films that are Iranian movies that no one's ever seen over here. And it like, they go all the way back to like the 70s or something. Like, he had a considerable number of films under his belt before he started making films in the United States. And it begs to be seen. Like, I want to see those movies. Like, what were those like?
Right. Well, because it's interesting. So when I was in college, kind of full disclosure, because I was an anthropology major and I was studying the Middle East, and so I got into Iranian cinema at that time. But the Iranian cinema that I was into was post-revolution new wave. So Abbas Kiarostami, Mohsen Makhmalbaf. One of my favorites is a movie called Narges by director Bani Etemad. It's like kind of an Oedipal complex kind of movie. But what's really interesting about it is the director is a woman, and she did it from the standpoint of the older woman, which you almost never see. It's usually like the young guy that's the focal point of the Oedipal film. And also Rakshan Bani Etemad is her name. But also because of Iranian social norms, so the young man meets a young woman that he falls in love with, and she has to pretend to be the younger man's mother. The older woman has to pretend to be the mother to be able to meet the bride's family. So it was that combination of seeing it from a different perspective that we usually don't see, but then also having that other element. So, a lot of great movies from this time period, like probably like late 80s into the 90s. And I was like really a big fan. And so I hadn't heard of Amir Shervan, but the reason why I hadn't heard of him is that because he left Iran during the revolution and then comes back to the US and starts making movies. And of course, I didn't put those two together when I saw Samurai Cop. I'm just thinking, okay, Samurai Cop's this, ridiculous film. But then when, I think, reading Awful Awesome and I think it was between Awful Awesome Volume 1 and Ty and Brett at Comeuppance Reviews they'd reviewed some of Shervan's other films. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
boy, there's a whole other world of these films, and that's when I discovered that he was from Iran and had this career before. But of course, I never would have known that because I didn't know Iranian film pre-revolution. But there's almost a sense, and I don't know if what you think of this idea, but there's almost a sense that Shervan coming to America, right? You know, he's based in sort of the Iranian film tradition and the cultures and norms there. Even though that was the royalist Iran under the Shah. But he comes to America, and it's almost like he looked at what was popular at that time. You know, movies like Commando, Rambo, things like that, and he just it's almost like he's holding a mirror up to us to show us what our movies are like, and it's almost like this distorted, you know, cultural lens that it comes through. But it almost gives the movies a different feel when you're thinking of it that way, as opposed to just like this idea that somehow he's an inept filmmaker or something like that.
Right. No, he was astute enough to know exactly what audiences in the United States wanted. Now, I don't know what the audiences wanted when he was making films in Iran, but he does nail it. He nails all the tropes. It's got all the stuff. It's got drugs. It's got shooting. It's got nudity. It's got violence. It's got, you know, the sleazy sense of humor. It's got all of those things, and yet there's something off about all of his films. Like, it's there, but it's clear that he understood all of it, but it is clearly coming from a different perspective, which I love. I think that's great. I think some of the most fun films of this type are often made by people who are immigrants, who see the films, who experience American culture as an outsider, as someone who's an immigrant, and they're processing what they're seeing through their own cultural lens, and it just makes it so much more unique and unpredictable. And I think it's that level of unpredictability that makes a lot of the Awful Awesome films so much fun. And Shervan definitely has that, where characters say things that, like, even in like movie culture, is like too far. Like, really, like not only would Americans not likely say those things in public, and certainly not like in Samurai Cop as being law enforcement. I would hope that they would be a little bit more circumspect in the way that they spoke to each other. Um, but that's what makes it so much fun. That's what makes it so much fun. The weird thing about Shervan's films is that if you look at his American filmography, he starts with Hollywood Cop, which is definitely not lacking in bizarre moments. A little boy befriends a vicious dog just by talking to him, and then like they're best friends. And there's silly stuff that happens in that. There's an oil wrestling scene as well, but it's pretty competent. But there's like this interesting sliding scale that the more films he completes in the United States, the more threadbare the films seem to become. It's almost like he came over with like, or maybe he had money, and he kind of blew it on the first film, and there's like a law of diminishing returns in his film. So it's like each one seemingly has a lower budget than the last one, and so they become progressively more ludicrous as they go along.
Yes, yeah, and it's interesting. That's probably a really good point, because I know, like when I was, getting into Iranian cinema in the kind of the late '90s, early 2000s, and I was looking for the films. It was actually somebody in LA who was bootlegging them. So I'd get these bootleg VHSs, and of course, this was like right. I think it was like right before 9/11. So I remember, like, my dorm, I would have like these boxes of like films that all had, of course they're Farsi, but it's written in Arabic. Sure, people like somebody would come in, like I have different roommates, and I remember one roommate came in and was like, they had a girl over, and she was like, "What is that?" And like, "Oh yeah, he just watches Iranian films." And so it was like kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, because there's a large Iranian community in LA. I wonder if like he kind of moved there into that. Maybe as a filmmaker, he had some money, and maybe there were some people that had money over there that were funding him initially. That maybe when Hollywood Cop wasn't as big as he was maybe telling them it was going to be when they agreed to invest in it. They suddenly were like, well, we're not going to, invest in your movies anymore, Amir. And he had to find funding elsewhere.
Yeah, it's like he wouldn't quit. It's like, well, the next one will be better. All right, well, this one didn't turn out so well, and I can only imagine that the circumstances around working independently in the United States must be vastly different, and also perhaps the types of films are vastly different from what he was used to making as well. I don't know. I don't know what he made in Iran, but here clearly you're talking late 80s, early 90s. The VHS boom is happening. Video stores are hungry for content. They want horror movies and they want action movies. And so he goes the action route. And I almost feel like maybe he was just a little bit too early, because the late 80s, that's the mid to late 80s, that's like everybody's buying up tons of like direct to video, shot on video horror. But then when you look at like, I don't know, maybe 93 to like 97, it's like nothing but like garbage action movies. Like that was like the era. Like you didn't see as much of that in the late 80s. Going to video stores, I would see like a lot of crappy horror movies, but it seemed like all of a sudden the market shifted. People were tired of horror or something, and then action became the thing. And I feel like maybe if he would have made his films a little bit later, like just a few years later, maybe he would have been a little bit more financially successful. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's a really great point, because right, at the time that he's making them, it's like the Canon period where it was a lot of Canon films that were in video stores at that time. Things like The Exterminator, American Ninja. Pray for those were the kind of movies I remember being in the video store. And then when Canon goes under in the early 90s, it's almost like that's the sound at the same time. And maybe that was part of it. Maybe when Canon goes under, the video stores needed more action because, like you said, there's a bigger market for it than there was. It was like you said, horror kind of starts the whole direct to video thing in the early mid 80s, and it kind of goes into that period. Because it's almost like too, like there was a lot of Philippine action stuff that suddenly makes into the video stores in that period.
Yeah, for sure. You got the New Horizons. Those there were a lot of those, and then you have the PM Entertainment action movies as well, right? Like, and those didn't really get going in earnest as far as PM Entertainment didn't really become what PM Entertainment would become until like 92, 93.
Right.
So I feel like I think Samurai Cop was 91. So I feel like he missed the boat by he was just maybe a little bit too early to the game. Maybe because there's so much like dumb garbage that came out. Cine XL as well. Right, like they were making stuff in the mid 90s mostly. I feel like that was kind of the golden era of direct to video action trash, was really like 92 to 96 or 97 maybe. Because post Pulp Fiction, it's kind of dodgy.
Right, exactly. Because we like, when I talk with Time Brett at Comeuppance, we talk about like a mid 80s to mid 90s, but I think you make a great point that mid to late 80s stuff, except for the Canon stuff, the other stuff really wasn't as available until you get into the early 90s, and then it was just sort of like a glut of everything. I mean, PM is a great example. I mean, you could, Amir, I mean, they were always they were kind of letting anybody direct movies, or kind of anybody who had the desire to direct movies. I guess the one thing that you had to be amenable to is not getting paid that much. So that might have been an area where Amir maybe wouldn't have wanted to team up with PM. But yeah, I think you make a great point that I think, cable TV was getting bigger, especially the premium channels. There's kind of more of them as we get into the 90s, and they were looking for content. Yeah, so
I mean, think about all those Roger Corman movies, all the Don the Dragon Wilson movies that came out, right? It was definitely a 90s thing, and really like not exactly like 93 to like a little bit later. Like that was kind of the golden era. All those Blood Fist movies, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like maybe he was a little bit too early because I think Hollywood Cop is like 86 or something.
Yeah.
Like he was just maybe a little bit too early to the game.
Yeah.
But we do still have these five films: Hollywood Cop, Gypsy, Killing American Style, Young Rebels, and Samurai Cop.
Yeah.
And for my money, I mean, everybody talks about Samurai Cop. Everybody talks about, and rightfully so. It's a total crowd pleaser. It's Pantheon. It is like it's on my Mount Rushmore. I've seen Samurai Cop. I don't even know how many times at this point, because whenever I have anybody that I know that I see socially that shows any interest in watching these types of films, Samurai Cop, it's either Samurai Cop or Miami Connection. Like those are the two that I'm most likely to trot out. But for my money, I think the number two film from Shervan for me is Young Rebels. I think that is his second most fun film, especially because it features Robert Zadar, who can't get enough of. He doesn't have a beard in this one. He does have some long flowing locks. This one came out right before Samurai Cop, I think right, or is Killing American Style?
No, it was Young Rebels. Well, technically Gypsy, which we never got, but yeah, Young Rebels, Gypsy, then Samurai Cop. So yeah, because again, Gypsy, like you said, it's a harder one to find. That we don't even know if it got released here in America. So it's almost like in America, right, from American audiences, it would have been Young Rebels, then Samurai Cop.
Well, and again, Gypsy, you can see on Tubi. I've seen it. It was on Amazon briefly. It is it's okay. It's got Harold Diamond in it, who was in all the Andy Sedaris, not all, but a lot of the Andy Sedaris movies. He's in it, which is fun. And many of the same locations that are used in Young Rebels are used in Gypsy. I think the farm with all the horses was the exact same place as in Hollywood Cop. I'm guessing that might have been Shervan's place or something, or at least it was somebody that he knew. But we get Zadar, which is awesome. We get a little turn by Aldo Ray, but he's hilarious in it. He's just like swearing up a storm as a surly sheriff who's just, oh, I wish he was in it more.
Yeah.
We get another actor that's in it, like really briefly, which I noticed right at the beginning of Young Rebels, the main star of Silent Night, Deadly Night 2. The guy who says "Garbage Day," like that guy.
Yeah.
He's in Young Rebels. He's at the very beginning. He's a goon who has a shotgun. He has no lines, but it's him. I was like, oh my gosh, it's the guy from Silent Night, Deadly Night 2. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
I wish that he was in it more. We also get a whole host of amazing goons in Young Rebels. They all have a very unique fashion sense. They all look very different. I particularly like the guy who looks like he could be like George Michael's stunt double.
Yes, I was gonna say. Yeah.
He's great. Later in the film, we briefly get a turn by a guy who looks like he could have been a roadie for Glenn Danzig. And another guy looks like he's wearing pajamas. We get like bad jackets. Zadar has his shirt unbuttoned the entire movie so he can show off his physique, which I don't blame him. He's super jacked in this movie. He looks great.
Yeah.
I also really like the music in Young Rebels, and I mean that legitimately. Like it sounds like the same stuff from Samurai Cop, but there's more of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, this is fun to listen to. I wish, as far as I know, the soundtrack to Samurai Cop is like gone, because I believe Cinema Epoch was gonna try to see if they could like put it out. Much like they did with Miami Connection, how they put that out on vinyl. Like I think Cinema Epoch was interested in doing that, but I'm pretty sure that they looked into it and they found that it doesn't exist anymore. The soundtrack to Samurai Cop. So I imagine the soundtrack to this is probably also similarly gone, but it's fun. It's clearly done by the same person who did Samurai Cop. And you get some nice punctuating, very dramatic, and also some nice beats. Like I don't know, like I legitimately like the music in this. I don't know.
Yeah, no, well, because what it does is it adds to the fun. I think that's kind of the biggest thing for me is that that this movie is. I mean, it's made in '89. It just kind of has that feel of the late '80s. I think this one. I think Killing American Style. As well, but this one more so, where it's like you said, this gang of goons that we have, it's like they're all just sort of like yeah, name your '80s your 80s stereotypical location or trope or whatever, hair band concert, guys waiting in line for a hair band concert, the George Michael one, I think there's one shirt that the main character John Green wears. Now I can't think of it. It had like a design on it that's just like perfect, like you're going to the beach and there's a store that sells like 10 shirts for $1 kind of.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. And I have to wonder, like, this movie's so, I mean, it's so cheap.
Yeah.
My guess is like they're probably just wearing their own clothes.
Right.
Right. And so like it was kind of like, are you buff? Yes, check the box.
Yes.
Okay. Can you hold a gun? Yes.
Yeah.
Can you fall on the floor and look like you're in pain? Okay, got it. And then do you have a unique look? Like bring your most interesting clothing to the set. And you know what? Those actors brought the thunder. They brought it. I was having so much fun just looking at what everyone was wearing.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of Zadar actually like walking around with like a shirt that has like no buttons on it and it's just like open all the way to his stomach, and that's just a shirt. Like he's just like, it's Tuesday, this is what I wear on Tuesday. Like I love it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, because I think he wanted to like kind of affect this, like, I don't know, the mob boss. I couldn't tell. I think he was supposed to be like an Italian mob boss, right? Because he's Vincenzo.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I think Zadar was playing his son. Carlos Rivas played the mob boss.
Who does a great job of yelling the entire movie.
Yes,
he's fun.
Yeah, and so Robert Zadar, I think, wanted to play like this, like stereotypical like mobster's son kind of character, and he was like, again, I think that's kind of the thing is like when you watch it, you're just like, boy, like what is Robert Zadar doing? But you can almost kind of see, like, especially now hearing when he was talking about how he's talking to your friend about the like, oh, I've got this idea for the movie, I got this idea for the film. I can see him with Siobhan saying like, oh, I'm gonna be a mobster's son. Yeah, I'm gonna wear shirts that just come all the way down. I'm gonna wear cowboy boots, and yeah, I'll kind of act like I'm like this entitled kid, even though he was like almost 40 when he made the movie. But he was trying to play like this entitled son who's almost like a prodigal son who is not always doing what he's supposed to as the son to this major mob boss character.
And they don't look anything alike. Like they could not look any more different.
Right.
Like you just couldn't. Like the only way he could look any different is if he was blonde. Like that's basically it. Like it's like, really, Dad? All right, sure. I'll believe that. All right, okay. Yeah, you bring up a good point, because in Samurai Cop he's supposed to be this very stoic character, and in this one he's not. Like he's supposed to be a lot more flamboyant and more arrogant, and that definitely plays out. We get a sex scene with Robert Zadar, where the actress like is like slapping him and stuff, which is weird. And then later we get an extended striptease while he's just like, he's sitting on the bed drinking out of what looks like an ice cream sundae cup, and he's like drinking wine or something, and he's just watching this really long striptease.
Right.
So that's different. It's like, wow, never thought I would see those things in a movie.
And his reactions, and you almost wonder too the way he's reacting to seeing the stripper. It's like either A, he doesn't know how to do it in a way that's like not going to come off odd, or B, he's reacting to nothing, right? That they're just shooting him and they're telling him, yeah, pretend the woman's there in front of you dancing naked.
Oh, you know what? That's a good point. That's a
Yeah.
good point. I bet. Yeah, because you don't see them in the same frame together, except at like the very, very end when he grabs her as a hostage. You're
Right.
probably right. Yeah, because he's like making like kissy faces, and he's just like, ooh, so good, so good.
Yeah.
Um, love it. Super awkward. Both scenes are very, very awkward. All the locations in the movie are super dumpy,
Hmm.
like really beat down and like just like old furniture that's like at least 10 years out of date at that point,
Yeah.
if not more. Another actor in the film that I wanted to mention was Yamashita,
Oh yes.
Tadashi Yamashita. uh how he's in this, I don't know. Like, I don't know how they convinced him to be in this, because he was in the Octagon. I wrote it down. He's been in a bunch of stuff. He was in the
Yeah.
Octagon. He was in American Ninja. He was in Gymkata.
Yeah.
And he's actually he actually is a karate master in Shorin-ryu, which is that's probably like the third most popular uh worldwide of karate, like that you're likely to find at a karate dojo. And he's like apparently currently he's still alive. He's 80 years old.
Wow.
And he is currently the president of the Shorin-ryu American Federation. And he's a 10th degree 10th dan black belt in Shorin-ryu, and then he's also a 10th degree in Mariyoshi Kabuto. Kabuto is weapons. So karate, it doesn't use weapons,
Right.
right? Like it's karate literally means empty hand. Kara means empty, te means hand. So it literally means empty hand. And so Kabuto is the use of weapons. So he could like beat you up with anything. And I find it so surprising. Also, fun fact: he apparently is the guy who takes credit. At least he's the guy who takes credit for teaching Bruce Lee how to use the nunchucks.
Oh. Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's him. He was the hero in the movie. And I mean, anytime he does do any karate in the movie, he just puts everybody else to shame.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and you mentioned Sin Excel earlier. Couple Sin Excel movies that he was in. Capital Punishment,
Yep.
the Gary Daniels one, and I didn't realize this. He was uncredited in Pocket Ninjas, which is which also had
No
Robert Lazar.
kidding.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Like, I don't know who his agent was,
right.
that he's this like legitimate, very well respected, incredibly talented martial artist,
Yeah,
and then he's in Pocket Ninjas and he doesn't even get credit for being in
right.
Pocket Ninja. Like, fire your agent, dude. Like,
Yeah,
man, what are you doing messing around with Cine XL? It's surprising that Gary Daniels ever did anything with Cine XL, because here he is, he's doing PM Entertainment movies, and then he's doing Cine XL movies, and buddy,
yeah,
those Cine XL movies, they're hilarious. I love them. Don't get me wrong, but they're like way threadbare. They're way low budget. He did one, I think it's either late 90s or early 2000s, called Reptelicant,
yes.
and it's really bad. And it's like, how are you just like really good friends with what's his name, David Hui?
Right.
They must be like buddies or something. Like, hey man, can you do me a solid? Can you be in this movie? Because
Yeah.
like Gary Daniels is better than that.
Yeah, yeah. I think when I talked about Capital Punishment, I was like, it had all these elements that didn't fit, and yet it just sort of just like it. I guess it's one of those ones that works in spite of itself, which I guess you could say about like Samurai Cop or other Shervan's films. It's just yeah, the Cynic Cell stuff is just like it's other level. And I don't know if it was because Daniels was trying to make a name for him. I mean, one of the interesting things about his PM stuff, if you know, is that like his early stuff, a lot of times he was like second fiddle to people like Chad McQueen, and
Right.
then he gets the three R's, the recoil, riot, and rage, which just are some of the best of PM. But that's like later. That's kind of like mid to later 90s. So he kind of had to work, which again you think is interesting because we see him, we just think like, of course, like yeah, of course you'd want Gary Daniels as your star, not Chad McQueen. He's the one who's going to do all the work. But no, and I guess that's probably where the Cynic Cell stuff came in, where he was just like, I got to work, I got to make money, and so yeah.
I mean, Daniels was working for a lot of different companies at that time. I always find it surprising. Like, okay, so Cine XL or Amir Shervan's films, they use the same actors, right? Like Shervan, Zadar's in a few of them. He reuses the same actors. Like they keep popping up. And presumably at some point they saw the movie that they were in. Right. So like I don't think anybody who was in Hollywood Cop made the transition to any other films, right?
Yeah.
But like, so you saw Young Rebels, and then you were like, yeah, I'll do Samurai Cop. Like really? Like you like you saw what it was, and you're like, yeah, that's cool. I'll do more of that. Like and the same thing with the Cine XL movies, like.
Yeah.
Bro, you saw Pocket Ninjas. What are you doing Reptelicant for? Like, what this is gonna be. You know that this is not gonna be good for your career. At least with PM Entertainment, it was like, oh, that was solid. That was I'm proud of my work in that movie. And then it just keeps getting better.
Yeah.
Like you start from a pretty low point in Cine XL and with Amir Shervan's movies, and they never get better.
Right.
And yet you're like, yep, let's do another. All right, I'm game.
Right. Well, that's why I wonder with Zadar, if it, at least with him, if like Shervan gave him a level of like creative input that he didn't get in other places. I mean, like just think about Zadar playing a samurai in Samurai Cop. He never would have gotten that role anywhere else. Like nobody's, I mean, he's kind of always like the big heavy. That's really his character. And, I think there's some, like there's some PMs that he did that I would say like, okay, yeah, he was more than just whatever, the big guy in the movie. But that kind of comes a little bit later. And maybe that was the thing where it was like, here he is in the late the late 80s. And everybody's just like, oh, we got this guy with this big face and big body. We're just going to use him as the heavy. And Shervan's like, no, here, you can play this character. It's got a little bit more meat to him. And he's like, okay, well, either I play this character that is just sort of like a one note, or I get to really flex my muscles as an actor. And I think that's kind of the big thing with all of these guys, whether it's, Daniels is kind of the same way. If you hear him, Atkins, in interviews, they all want to be known as a thespian as well as an action star. And so I wonder if, it was just the temptation there. Shervan's like, here, maybe I can't pay you a lot, Zadar, but I'm going to make you somebody different than you're used to.
Right. You're not just going to be a goon like he was in so many other films, or where, I've gone down the road of like, I'm going to watch a bunch of Robert Zadar movies because he always delivers, always. No matter what movie he's in, he never, ever phones it in.
Yeah.
It could be just like the most awful bargain basement shot on like, like just the worst camera ever. And it does not matter. He's going to give 100% of what he has, which I super respect him for. But in a fair number of his movies, he doesn't even get to say anything.
Right.
So like the Maniac Cop movies, he's just a big hulking guy and he doesn't get to say anything. So I don't think he ever saw a check that he would ever turn down. He during his lifetime, he was in a lot of movies. Zadar has a lot of screen credits.
Yeah.
It didn't really matter. And from what I gather, there's quite a few actors to this day that are precisely like that. That had once been popular and lost their popularity through whatever reason, and they're still cranking them out, and it does not matter. Like you'd be surprised at what you can get certain actors for. Like when I went to the Samurai Cop 2 showing, it was like, it doesn't take a whole lot because they just want to work. They love working. they just want to work. And as long as you're willing to work around their schedule or make it easy for them, a lot of these people that you would never expect to be in, like if you had like a micro budget movie, you could probably get somebody for like $100 for a day,
Yeah.
which is like insane for some of the actors that you can get for absolute dirt cheap. But it's just they just want to work. They want to work. They want to get their name out there. They want to get their face out there, and they never know what's going to be the one that's going to help launch their career. And I think guys like Zadar, I think he probably always held out hope that at some point he was going to get a role that would help launch him. And clearly, he enjoys himself, right? He likes to act. I mean, it's better than chopping wood or whatever else he would have been doing. Like, hey, you want to come out and like hang out on a film set and act silly and shoot guns? Like, heck yeah, I want to do that. So, I think some of that has to be part of it. One thing I will say, comparatively to now, it must have been really, really cheap to get women to bare their bodies back in 1989,
Yeah.
because that nobody on this movie got paid hardly anything,
Yeah.
and yet there is like a fair amount of nudity in it. Like, I'm always surprised with these super low budget junky movies from this era, how often women are like, yeah, sure, whatever, yeah, no problem. It's like, really, for this movie?
Yeah. Well, because like you look at Delia Shepard is the woman who does the strip tease for Zadar in that one scene there. She's really from Copenhagen, from Denmark, according, because she's got a whole IMDb page here. But she was in a bunch of stuff. But I think that's once you kind of get known for that sort. I mean, she was in Rocky V, apparently. I think sometimes there's a sense too of like, okay, if I do a nude scene here, because the other thing too, right, that you can say, like, for example, with her scene, there's no there's no like body double in there. This is her naked, and in the other scenes with the women, it's them naked. It's not a body double or somebody else. So it's not like they're not getting naked. But I think there's either maybe a sense of like, this is going to be the thing that's going to get me over if I'm in this movie and I just kind of go for it, or maybe there's a sense of, I mean, some of them might have been strippers too, where it's like, well, they're already getting, they probably get paid better doing that than to have to be, working on a Friday or Saturday night and dealing with all the guys there, so they'll get in this movie, it'd be kind of more fun.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's the allure of like, maybe you could become an actress, just be in my movie and take your clothes off. Yeah, I mean, that's entirely possible. I just still find it surprising in the era, in the world that we live in today, where most, I mean, I can't remember the last time that I saw like any kind of major nudity in like a big budget movie. Like, they just like, it's not, that's not the thing. But back in the day, it was, especially if it was like a video store type thing. It was like, listen, this is what you need to have in order for to get distribution.
Yeah.
Right. Which is why like a lot of like garbage horror movies that you watch will have a kill right at the beginning of the movie, and also have nudity right at the beginning of the movie, so that a potential buyer will say, all right, I saw enough, I watched 5 minutes, we're good.
Yeah. Well, like you think like Wynorski and Fred Olen Ray, right? That's sort of that's their MO. David Dakota is probably another one, right? That like when you watch one of their horror films, it's like there's Melissa Moore or Brink Stevens or whoever, Julie K. Smith. Right at the very beginning, they're nude, and then somebody gets killed off. Usually it's not one of them, but it could be, right? Because it could be like, Brink Stevens may have done another movie for Fred Olen Ray on another, another set or whatever. And like, hey, if you got 5 minutes, can you do a kill in this movie here for me? And so there you go. She's in that one too. And yeah, it's a good point that like, it's like I was thinking like the most recent film I can think of that had nudity was Wolf of Wall Street. My wife and I just watched that one recently, and there's a good amount of nudity there, but again, I don't know if there's doubling going on. Like, I don't know if Margot Robbie is actually nude, or if with technology now, if you can double her, or have somebody else, or
right,
even just
but
like
the the interesting thing is just that there's like I don't know, there's just like a lack of interest or a
Yeah.
lack of desire for that. I mean, frankly, I wouldn't watch a movie. I think maybe back then it was kind of pre-internet. It was
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, hey,
Right.
but now it's like, yeah, who cares, right? Like, whatever. I did actually just what was it? Yesterday, I watched Benedetta, the new Paul Verhoeven movie about nuns and an illicit affair. Lots of nudity,
Yeah.
lots. Good old Paul Verhoeven, who's like what 80 something years old, is making like a high budget, classy movie that's basically nunsploitation. Like it's nuts. Like that exists. Um,
Yeah, you always have to love Paul Verhoeven. He is just, yeah, he's it's very interesting because you think of like the movies that he's done. I mean, RoboCop obviously is the Basic Instinct. It's just like, um, yeah, he's kind of, I don't know, he's sort of like that auteur who's like always pushing the limits in a way that is just always very fascinating with his movies. I think, yeah, I haven't seen Benedetta yet. I'll probably have to check that out now.
yeah, it's on Hulu. It's that era of human history holds 0% interest for me.
Right.
So for me, it's a hard sell. The
Yeah.
only reason why I wanted to watch it was because he did it. That was it.
Yeah.
Like the subject matter doesn't interest me. Um, the time period doesn't interest me. But I thought, well, it's Verhoeven. I'll check it out. Why not? And it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Hmm.
It's an investment. It's on Hulu. But like that's really the only thing I can think of that's like, wow, okay, okay, here we go. There's the whole lot of stuff in this that is not in your normal mainstream movie. Then again, I suppose it isn't a mainstream normal mainstream movie. It's all in French, and he's Dutch, and it's wild. But yeah, it's funny. When you had contacted me and you said, hey, which Siobhan do you want to watch? And I said, oh my gosh, I want to watch Young Rebels.
Yeah.
And I had seen it at least twice before, and I thought, I remember I really liked it, but I don't remember much about it. And now I know why. The
Hmm.
movie has almost no story.
Yeah.
There's like no story. It's all action. It's
Right.
just there they are, bangity bang 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 bang.
Yeah.
Oh, we got away. Now here we are over here, and like it's just nothing but a bunch of shootouts and fist fights, and then more shootouts,
Right.
and like that's the whole movie. Like there's almost no story. It's just like I literally watched it a few hours ago, and I'm having a hard time remembering the exact story. I just remember like things about it that I thought were endearing or fun, like the fact that at the end of the movie, the big showdown, there's like all these glamour photos on the wall of what look like they could be like adult actresses or
Yes.
maybe strippers, and it's like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it
is
was
it?
somebody's game room. It was like somebody's like bar or like somebody's like I guess nowadays we'd call it a man cave, but it was like somebody's like guy play. With, like there was a bar there, and then there was like
And a
wallpaper.
jacuzzi in the
Yeah.
middle
Right.
of
Yeah,
the
that's a
room,
good point. That's a good point.
which was weird too. It's like, there's a bar, there's like 8x10s by either adult actresses or strippers on the wall that are framed,
And
which is
autograph.
funny. It's like, yeah, framed and autographed. Yeah, this is going in a frame. I'm gonna drive down to Kmart and I'm gonna get some frames for this stuff. Like this is important. This is important stuff. It's like, whose house was this? Because there's no way that's like, oh well, we'll hang this up for set decoration. There's no set decoration. Like
No.
they literally walked into somebody's house and filmed.
Yeah.
Like as is. I want to know why those photos are there. Also, the Vincenzo's office, which I have to wonder if that was like Siobhan's office,
Maybe.
because there's like a glossy 8x10 photo on the wall of an actor from from Samurai Cop, like on the wall. He was like when the Samurai Cop goes to the to the film editing lab, that guy, like he's up there on the, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the editor who's in Samurai Cop for like 2 minutes. Like his like glossy is like hung up on the wall. Like it's stuff like that, or the sign that says free puppies.
Yes, that was the best one ever.
It's just like, all right, that's weird. Sure.
Yeah.
And just like all the dumpy cars, Vincenzo, or no, it's the sheriff. He like drives like this like little 4-door white car that just looks awful. Um, it's just there's so much to look at, and seeing it in HD. I have I in my garage I have a 120-inch projector screen,
Oh,
so
nice.
that's how I got to watch it. So I can see all these like weird things in the background that I'm sure when you rented it on VHS in 1989, like you would never ever see.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that almost every single one of the shots, like the color timing is incorrect. Like all the stuff outside either looks blue or orange because it's either they're using I think the way that they shot these, back in the day, if you were an independent filmmaker and you really wanted to like cheap out on your film that you were shooting on, you could get the ends. You would go to like a lab and there would be unexposed ends to film. So let's say somebody shot on a reel of film, and they didn't use the last 10 feet of the film, but they needed to get the rest of it processed. They would cut off that unshot film and then sell those ends to people who needed to make a movie on a budget. And so like Samurai Cop, I've noticed as well, shot to shot is like dramatically different. It looks like different stock, and it's different colors. And all of your film stock comes with a certain color temperature. It'll be ready to shoot outside, so it'll be 5600, or indoors, so it'll be 3200. And then there's all these permutations and variations on those. And in order to shoot, you can use that film and you can shoot anywhere you want to, but you have to have the right filter over the lens so that it essentially exposes the film correctly for the light that you're in. They didn't do that at all. So there's like shots that are blue, shots that are orange. I also noticed at the end of the film, the fight that's in the man cave, there'll be a shot where the characters, you can see there's wood paneling behind them. They're in the room where there's wood paneling, and then it cuts to a shot where the walls are white, and then it cuts to a shot with wood paneling and then white, and then cut, like it's like back and forth, almost like it's intentional. But I think maybe they're clearly shot in two different locations.
Yeah.
So it's like Shervon went and shot it and then was like, crap, this doesn't edit together at all. I have to shoot a bunch of random shots so that this other footage will actually cut together.
Yeah, it's amazing when you talk about the film part, because my like first introduction to because I don't really have any kind of background in cinema at all, but I remember a Criterion collection of a Yasujiro Ozu film where they were talking to him about him finally making his movies in color, and he was debating between, I think, like the Kodak, which had like a certain red to it, or I don't know if it was Fuji or another film company. Like the red was a little bit different, and he was debating which one, because he didn't really like the red for either of them, but he was gonna try to settle. So like that's my understanding of it, is from the Ozu, like this like like this level. And here we are here, like I didn't, the idea of the ends, like I didn't even think of that as something, because you're right, like the color. I mean, it one of the things that I think about the time period this is made is, the late 80s is when things were so colorful. I think there's one room, I think the room where Zadar first has sex with his girlfriend, there's like a pink carpet with like this like bluish like bedspread on the bed in the middle there. And it's like, yeah, with all of these really beautiful, these big colors, and of course LA's, very colorful anyway. Like with the film, like you really notice it really stands out.
Yeah, and then another thing about this particular film, and I've seen Samurai Cop an awful lot of times, And I don't remember it being the case, but certainly in this film, there's a lot of scenes like the whole opening is it's all dubbed
Right. Oh
because
yes.
they weren't shooting with sound. They weren't shooting with synchronous sound, and that's actually a technique that the Italians used
Oh yeah.
forever to so they could shoot faster. And so it's like, man, that's wild. Like he shot. So there's a lot of sections in the movie where people like their lips aren't matching what they're saying at all. Like the I know in particular the beginning scene with the beginning deal, and then later the scene where it's like at the waterfront and they're getting like Mexican food
Oh
and there's
yes.
like the band that's playing and stuff. Like none of that is with synchronous sound. Like all of it's dubbed and dubbed badly.
Yeah, it's interesting because like some elements of this movie I kind of was thinking with Godfrey Ho, like Godfrey Ho when he does the ninja movies where he's got like a Garfield film because he hears that Americans like Garfield. It's almost like Shervan's like, okay, Americans like naked women and gunshots, so I'm going to put as much of that in our movie. But also, yeah, the dubbing piece of it as well, where it's like, yeah, I did catch like the very first one is like very very obvious because it's like it's not the whatever he's saying does not match
No.
his lips there, and then it kind of like you said it kind of goes in and out where there's scenes where it is what is the actual audio? So yeah, I wonder if there's certain elements. I mean, you never know too, right? That like maybe when he was filming that scene, if maybe somebody was doing construction outside, and he's like, well, we can't use this or something, and we've got to just dub it over.
Totally. Or
Yeah,
or maybe his sound guy never showed up and he was like, "Whatever, all my actors are here. I'm ready with the camera. Let's go." Like I love this idea of him. Filmmaking is incredibly hard.
yeah,
It's exhausting. There's a million things to think of. There's so many things that can go wrong. It is unbelievably hard to do. And the fact that he did it so many times on what was clearly like very little budget is so remarkable. And I have a ton of respect for him. And I especially love the let's just do it
yeah.
attitude that seems to permeate all of his films. Like, you know what? I don't care. Let's just do it. Like, let's just get the shot. We got to get the shot. It's not perfect. We don't have audio, or yes, there's construction going on. Who cares? We're not rescheduling. There's no way around it. There's the only way is to go through. Like that's it. Like I love that never say die attitude that seems to happen in his movies. There's a scene in the film where our hero and the what's his name Joselito
Yes.
Recobar or however you pronounce his name. They
Yes.
both jump into like that stream and
Yes.
they're going down the stream and I just felt like I was a little scared. Like what if they drown?
Right.
You know what I mean? I doubt there's anybody like hanging around with like a rope and
Right.
like a buoy or like it just felt like, all right guys, go jump in the river. Like uh really? Yeah, just go jump in it. Well, what happens if something goes wrong? Don't drown. That's what's going to happen is that you're not going to drown. Like
Right.
the same thing in Samurai Cop when there's an actor that does a full body burn in that, and they actually have the two main characters put him out.
Yeah.
They don't know how to put him out.
Right. Right.
Like they're not part of his stunt crew. There is no stunt crew, and it's like you really are going to trust these guys who don't know what
Yeah.
they're doing to put you out when you have like where there's a very fine line between this was a safe, successful stunt and I got horribly burned.
Right.
It's like a matter of seconds. Like
Yeah.
anytime there's any kind of stunts in these types of movies, I always think it's something as simple as jump in the river and like go down the river. That's still a stunt that could go really badly and you could die.
Yeah.
I always think like either the guts of the actors or just the lack of awareness because it's like, dude, you're not setting me on fire in a Amir Shervan movie. It's not happening. I'm not doing it. I'm not, or like, or falling out of a moving car. I'm not
Right.
doing that. I'm not going to do it. at all. You're not putting a blood pack on me. You're not exploding anything near me. Like, no one's going to point a gun at me unless you can prove to me that it's empty. Like, there's just so many things that just seem like they're not big stunts, right? Like, we've seen full body burns, anybody jumping into a stream, like whatever. But in the context of these movies where I feel like, is it really just like Amir Shervan operating the camera and there's just nobody else? It's just these three guys, the two in the water and the guy with the camera, and that's it. That's what I picture, and it could go wrong at any moment. Like just the wildness of these movies, the unpredictability, the like, nah, sure, it'll be fine. Let's go do it. Like, no, it could go really badly wrong, dude.
Yeah. Well, it's like not the last time you were on, but the time before that when we were talking about Man Killers, an AIP production, and I think we were talking about the same thing when there was like, these shootouts that were happening in the woods, and you're just seeing all these explosions going off everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like did Ted Pryor and William Zip just rig this together? And it's like, or whoever, it's like, and it's almost too like, I think one of the things we talk about with modern movies, people will complain about there not being enough practical effects and there's too much CGI, which I get, but I also am willing to say, like, okay, you know what? If you guys don't have the budget to get the real stunt guys in here, just use the fake bullets, use the fake blood squibs. So the fake blood squibs never seem to work, but just use them because I'd rather know that everybody made it through this film safely than have it look more real for me, if that's what it takes.
Man, there is such a narrow margin for error, and I feel like if nobody got injured on any of these Amir Shervan movies, it's just like dumb luck.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which isn't to say that they have like crazy stunts. It's not like they're PM Entertainment movies where like people are falling out of 10-story buildings and stuff. But the PM movies feel safe. It feels like, no, that's a real stunt person. Like all of the money went to the stunts.
Yeah.
Like that's where the money went to, was to all these explosions. And I never feel like in a PM movie like anybody's being unsafe. It feels more like they're just trying to make like a real, like something to add to their stunt show reel.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about like the Cine XL movies and these Amir Shervan movies, it's like, buddy, like, do you really feel safe in that situation? Do you really? Because I don't. Like, don't tell me nobody got punched in any of those fight scenes. Like, somebody probably really got hit. So someone walked away with a black eye or something, because it's just, it just seems so perilous. Like something as simple as jumping into a stream, it was like, ugh, like they're really moving down that stream. Like that stream is really taking them. Can they actually swim?
Well, not only that, right? But they're also fully clothed. I mean, yes, I guess the main character, he was in sneakers, so that's not. I think maybe they were both in sneakers, so maybe that's not so bad as like being in cowboy boots. They could be filling up with water as you're trying to swim. Yeah, I mean, it was hard to tell too, because I think initially that the water they were in initially wasn't that deep, because
no. In fact, when the main character like jumped in, I was like, buddy, I bet you he hit the bottom.
He
like
belly flopped.
Like it did not. But then later, the next shot, they're actually going down the stream, and it's like, I don't know. Yeah, sure. Maybe it's not that deep, and maybe they could just stand up. I don't know. But to me, I was just seeing like drowning.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, people don't realize, like, 'cause, how often does anybody ever get into the water fully clothed, right? Like, you're usually in like swim trunks, bare feet, maybe a shirt, maybe not. But
let me tell you, how often does somebody in California get into a stream or a river? We don't have that many. And we certainly don't have that many that you can actually get into and swim in.
Right.
We have like ridiculous droughts. We don't have, and all of our rivers are dammed up.
Yeah.
Like, there aren't that many spots to swim like that. So it's like, sure, I can swim in a pool. Well, that's different than swimming in a river.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you're right. Because I mean, do you hear about, like, I know, like, Sword and Sorcerer, the Albert Pyun film. One of the stuntmen died in that film when he was doing a jump off of a cliff. He died. Or John Saxon talks about, I think it was Steel Hands, or I can't remember what that movie was called, Hands of Steel, something like that. My
Oh
my
yeah,
my
that
IMDb
the
profile,
helicopter crashed
right?
or something, right?
Yeah, he said that he was supposed to be in that helicopter and he wasn't. And he said that was the last time he ever did a non-SAG movie, was that film. Because that's the other part of it too, right? A lot of this, a SAG movie is going to have all of the protections in place to make sure everything's okay. But these movies, you're just going for it.
Right, and who knows, right? Like,
Yeah,
who knows what could happen, and who knows how far they are away from the nearest hospital when they're at
mhm,
that farm. They're out in the middle of nowhere. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, man. It all seems very sketchy, and all of his films feel
yeah.
that way. Like, it's just like, someone probably or possibly got hurt there. And then, just like an overzealous actor who's really getting into it, and mistakes are made, and it's like, hey guys, we have like an hour to shoot this, so we gotta, like, we don't really have time for rehearsal, let's just do it. Like,
Yeah,
oh, okay.
right. Well,
What could go
Zadar.
wrong?
I mean, Zadar, I mean, his love scene, I mean, he's like attacking the woman when he's like kissing
Yeah,
her. And I think too, like with his fights and things like that, like he just gets so into it, and he's a big guy.
yeah.
I think that's a scary thing, is that, like, if he misjudges the distance on one of his fake punches, that's not going to feel very good. You probably would have to go to the hospital. You probably get a concussion, because he was not a small man.
It doesn't take much. It
Yeah,
it like it doesn't take much with a mistake.
yeah,
Or he could like break his hand on somebody's head or something.
right.
It doesn't take much for injuries to occur when people are throwing fists and kicking at each other and stuff. And then again, also, it's like, all the shooting
Yes.
as well. Like, are you sure that's a blank? Are you sure
Right.
that was done right?
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was like. So I know, like, I think that's kind of a move that's happening in the industry, where people are, especially after what happened with Alec Baldwin there, that it's like, okay, let's just do this CGI and not have to worry about it. And for me, I mean, I've always been a proponent, at least with animals, like, you've got lions or tigers or bears, whatever, but big animals like that, I've always been a proponent of just do a CGI version of it, and leave the tiger alone or whatever. But I'm beginning to kind of feel the same way. Like, at the very least, I don't get on a movie if I see a low budget movie and they're doing just the CGI gunshots. I don't get on them as much, I think, because of that reason, that I'm like, okay, if they didn't feel like they could, if they're cheaping out on it, I'd rather see them cheap out on it that way than cheap out on it by, like, not having the proper safety involved.
Right, for sure. Speaking of insane movies with full size animals doing crazy stuff, have you seen Wild Beasts?
No, I don't think so. No, I haven't seen
Oh
that.
my gosh. I think Synapse put that out. Again, it's probably on Tubi.
Yeah.
It's an Italian movie about a zoo where the animals are accidentally given PCP,
Okay.
and they escape from the zoo, and then it's up to I don't know, I can't remember if he's a cop or what, but like, they're basically trying to round up all these berserker animals, and they're real.
Right.
There's like a real jaguar running around attacking people.
Yeah.
There's a scene where a cheetah is like running someone down, like it's like actually chasing them like at full speed. It is insane. And you're talking like, okay, you're talking the 80s
Yeah.
in Italy, and you're talking real live, like, animals, like lions and bears, and like they're actually attacking people. Do you, in 1980s Italy, trust that trainer actually knows what they're doing and is going to keep you safe?
Right.
I never feel like I always like I don't care who it is. Like I don't mean to denigrate like Italy in the 80s.
Right.
But it just always seems like a lot less safe because there's like seemingly a lot less attention given to safety.
Yeah.
But even in like in an American movie or wherever where there's like a bear that attacks somebody or something, I always think like that actor or stunt performer or whatever must be unbelievable. There's no way. There's no way. I would never do that. I would be like, no, that's okay. I'll pass. I'll pass on having a grizzly bear, quote, pretend to attack me. Like, no, that's all right. I'm gonna pass. I don't want to be anywhere near your grizzly bear. I'm not shaking his hand. You keep it over there because I would be the guy that would do like that one thing that pissed off the grizzly bear and then I lost my head.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the trivia. So there's a sequence where there's a tiger in the subway, and I guess they shot from 1 to 3 a.m. When the subway was closed, and apparently the tiger got loose and was like hiding, and then went on top of one of the trains, and so they had to like keep the subway employees from entering the station until they were able to catch the animal. They said there were 3 animal handlers that were present on set with tranquilizer guns for the scenes involving the animals. I mean, so how does that work, right? So a tiger has jumped on me, right? This big, massive tiger, and I'm on the ground, and it is like clawing at me. It's biting me, and the handler shoots it with the tranquilizer. How much time does it take for all that to happen? Like, how many scratches do I get? I mean, I think of,
how much of my body ends up in the lion's stomach before he falls asleep? Yes, exactly. Like they don't act that fast, not fast enough. Like that. Can you imagine being one of those actors? Be like, no, 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 it's fine. We've got a trank gun, bro.
so
You need a trank gun. Does that mean that these things aren't trained very well? That you are anticipating that things are going to get out of hand, and that this animal is going to attack me or run away.
So it says
Like,
here that one of the actors, Antonio DeLeo, the star of the film, he was almost decapitated by the polar bear, where in the scene where the polar bear swings a paw at him because it narrowly missed his head. If you look at Antonio DeLeo's IMDb, this is the last. Wild Beast is the last movie that he did. So he was done doing movies after that. that was enough to sour him on the industry.
yeah, can you imagine? Like that, it's an insane movie, dude. It is. You're like, I'm not saying it's like necessarily good,
right.
but just from like these are real people that thought that this was a good idea and somehow they pulled it off and they did actually make a movie, but like you have a cheetah running around Italy at night.
Right, yeah. Well, apparently, like I say, they wanted to do it in Rhodesia, or South Africa, but they just were told you can't do it here. I guess they didn't want the publicity or something. I don't know. Which, I mean, I guess that's, if you think about it, right? Because you think of like the disaster movies. If you're South Africa, and I guess at that time with apartheid, they were probably already, their tourist industry was already having issues. And then they're like, well, when people to come in for safaris and stuff, and like, oh, we can't go to our zoo because people are afraid to go to the zoo because they're afraid the animals are going to be laced, dosed with PCP and attacking people.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. And there's that other one with the house full of lions. Ah, man. Somebody listening to this is going to be like, I know exactly what you're talking about. But there's a film. I want to say Synapse put that one out as well. Yeah, that or it was Draft House. But it's a film about a house full of lions, and they're real lions, and and then like a family that owns them. There's not even really that much of a plot to it because it was real. Like these people really did have like 10 lions at their house, and the stories behind it are insane. Well, in the movie, like the lions eventually go crazy and the family has to like figure out how they're going to get out of this house full of lions. And there's these shots where there's like 15 lions in a room.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's terrifying. Like, you don't have to pretend like this is a movie. Like, it's just terrifying. And that people actually did get severely injured in the movie. I think one of the cameramen got scalped. Like a lion just bit his his scalp off.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
walked up and bit him on the head and like
Yeah.
ripped his scalp off of his head.
Yeah. Yeah, animals. That's the thing. Is like animals like that. Like they just. I mean, obviously the fact that Siegfried and Roy. I mean, they were acting with tigers for years, and it was just
And
a
got
matter
injured.
of time. Yeah.
Yep.
It's these animals are not meant for this kind of thing. And I mean, I think the same thing with chimpanzees. With chimpanzees in movies, because I mean, as primates, they're so closely related to humans. It's like like just leave them there in Africa doing their thing in various jungles. And most of the countries there, I mean, yes, they deal with poaching, but a lot of the countries have like preserves and they've got national parks set up so that they can just sort of live. And it's like, yeah, I get it. You want to do your movie with Matt LeBlanc, whatever that was, Ed or whatever the movie was, with the chimpanzee that plays baseball, I think it was. Yeah, it's a funny movie, it's a funny idea, but it's like, all right, we've got the technology. If George Lucas can make a movie full of soldiers that are all CGI, we can probably do it with the animals if we have to.
Yeah, no, I just seeing like older like 80s movies that use actual like beasts is just man. Although you don't have the same, at least I don't have the same sense of like terror watching something like Beastmaster.
Yeah.
Like that somehow feels safe, even though that was not a mega budget movie, right? But it like it doesn't feel like, oh man, someone's gonna get hurt. Like like watching Wild Beasts, it's just like, oh, there's no way people didn't get hurt making this. Like there's just no way. And if they did, like it was just dumb luck. Like it was just
right.
like it would like there was no. Oh my gosh. Like just I have it burned into my head, the scene of a cheetah chasing someone down, and it's just, how do you tell that cheetah, like, I want you to chase this person, but don't like eat him.
Right.
Like I get it. Like I have cats and they get silly and you can do silly stuff with them and stuff, but like my cats don't weigh as much as I do.
Yeah.
And like it really doesn't take much. Even if they think that they're playing, like it's just, oh my God, yes. And that polar bear scene is insane too. It's just like, how did you get a polar bear? Who has a polar bear? Like you're in Italy, like who has a polar bear? You're like, I got a polar bear. You want to rent my polar bear? Like who? Like they don't use polar bears in movies.
Right. Yeah. It's and again, like I mean, you're talking about the dumb luck. I mean, that was dumb luck that the animal just happened to miss his head when he swung at him.
They don't even have bears in Europe. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like we at least have bears here. There's like some degree of familiarity. Like you might see a bear at some point, somewhere, but there are no bears. In Europe. Like, how do you have a bear in Italy?
Right.
Where do you keep it?
Right. Exactly.
Like at least out here, usually when someone has like a giant, like I have a bear that I have trained, but I live in Texas and I have 20 acres and I have all this land. Like I don't feel like there's that much room to have a polar bear in Italy.
Yeah. No. And I mean, from a temperature standpoint, I think I remember hearing about this that I sometimes I'll listen to a radio show out of Miami and they have Ron McGill, who runs Zoo Miami, on, and he talked about like polar bears, like they don't do well in captivity. Like they don't, at least from what he was saying, like they were talking about like maybe, because sometimes, you talk about how like their habitat's, going away, and is it possible to maybe like rescue a polar bear and get them to safety, or, have them have a kind of a safer life in a zoo environment. And it's like, it's not that easy. You can't just, and so, yeah, I don't even know like how they get a polar bear, like, it's in a zoo, maybe, I guess in Italy or something. It's probably not in a good mood. It's probably not in any kind of good mental state when you get into the movie area. It's gonna, that's the thing with animals, right? Is that when they're, when they're in that kind of environment, they can snap for no reason. You just don't know what would cause it. So.
Well, and a bear doesn't know that you're acting.
Right, that too. Yes.
You can't be like, all right, bear, for this scene, this guy's gonna come at you, and you're gonna like try to kill him, but don't kill him, okay, bear? You got that? Don't kill the guy. And he's just acting. He's not actually mad at you. He's not. There's no threat. Like, he's not going to do anything to you, bear. Everything's fine. Like, you can't explain that to a bear.
No, no, exactly. No. So, yeah, I think, it obviously, like fortunately, Siobhan didn't do any animals like that. I don't think he did, right? I don't think he had. He had
No.
dogs maybe, but he didn't.
Oh yeah, there was the dog in Hollywood Cop, which, like I
Yeah.
said, the boy's like, you're a good dog. I can tell. We're gonna be buddies. And then the dog's just like, burr.
Yeah,
And then
right.
he turns on his master just because this little boy talked to him. It's
Yeah.
really, really funny.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I think things like that, like, I mean, I don't know what it costs to like have a CGI rendered animal in a movie and then have a character acting against it.
Let me tell you, it costs a lot less than getting sued by the family that your animal killed.
Right, exactly. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Like,
Yeah, right.
It's a lot less than that. You see, there's a lot less time in jail too.
Right. And it's a lot cheaper, I guess, too, to just sort of remove that page of the script and say, you know what? Nobody's getting attacked by a bear in this movie. Let's just do something else.
Yeah, seriously.
Right.
Seriously. You know what? The bear's not feeling like it today. That's fine. That is fine. We still have a movie. We're okay. We're good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, there's always that part of it too.
So Amir Shervan made these movies from, like, I think it was 86 to 91. He cranked out 5 movies, so he just cranked them out like really, really fast. Stopped in 91.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, like, why? And did he have any other scripts that he just was never able to complete? Like I have like visions of like the long lost Shervan script being found.
Yeah.
And then Cinema Epoch going, you know what? We found this script. His family found his script in like an old shoebox or something. And I guess it'd have to be pretty big shoes. But we're gonna make it. We're gonna make the movie. We're gonna do the thing. Let's make it.
Yeah, because I mean, he lives for another 15 years after Samurai Cop, and so and he for a director in particular, he's not that old, right? He's born in 29, so he would have been in his 60s at that point. And you do wonder, because I think talking about the idea that like he ran out of funding, and I do wonder if it was one of those things where it was like each film did worse than, or each one that didn't deliver, it sort of maybe shrank his ability to get funding to make movies. And yeah, you gotta think that he had more scripts that if he's making a movie one movie a year, like you said, like wouldn't you think he'd have the 19? I mean, I guess Woody Allen, maybe isn't the best example, but as somebody who was trying to make a movie every year until finally that stopped. But he had the scripts, he was writing them, and it's somebody as prolific as Shervan, because if you look to it, his Iranian career, it's kind of the same thing where he just kind of bangs out a bunch of movies in a short span.
Right.
Yeah.
So not only that, but it's like, okay, so he has all those other films that he made, which means he could hypothetically just remake them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, sure. Like culturally, they may not be like relevant. They may not translate, but he did a bunch of them there.
Yeah.
Don't tell me he didn't have like 3 that he could have been like, yeah, all right, we'll just repurpose the script and we can just redo it here. Like, it just makes me wonder if there's other stuff out there or other films, or like, what did he do for those remaining years? And it really is a shame that he didn't live long enough to know that his films did find an audience.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that's interesting, kind of just looking at his IMDb bio here, they talked about, I guess, like his, he used a lot of improvisational acting and dialogue, which I think kind of goes to the point about what you were talking about with this film with Young Rebels, where it's almost like there's no story, right? It's almost like,
no, it's just a whole bunch of shooting, and that's about it.
Yeah, and I think because it's essentially, there's this idea that the reason the main character, Joe Green, or the character's name is Charlie. He gets called in to, like, because his brother has a gambling debt, to, like, I guess go get smuggle a couple of drug smugglers from Mexico back into the U.S. And then he doesn't want to take them when he discovers that they're smuggling drugs, which is, I guess, what else would you think they were smuggling? But I guess he was trying to smuggle them back, and he flies the helicopter back to the U.S. There's a shootout, and that's essentially it. It's just a series of shootouts, and it's either Vincenzo's men are attacking Green and his buddies, or Green and his buddies are attacking Vincenzo's men. And that's essentially a good, I guess, hour of the film. The last hour of the film is that, and in that sense it kind of works as a kind of a fun thing.
Oh, for sure. I mean, one thing that always hurts these types of films, these lower budget films, is that they usually pad out the runtime with endless dialogue that's really boring and super uninteresting. And there's usually some sort of like love affair subplot that nobody cares about. Exactly. Like every single sci-fi movie on the Sci-Fi Channel ever is just like some melodrama, and it's only there so that they don't have to show the monster. In this case, the movie is padded out with non-stop action.
Yeah.
Albeit, sloppy action. Yes, right. Yes, action and sex.
Yeah,
Zadar and nudity.
Yeah. I mean, like the main character, Charlie, he has a live-in girlfriend, Liz, but then there's another girl. I guess it's like his brother's dead fiance's sister that he's also hooking up with. And I almost thought I thought maybe like they just had two actresses playing the same character, because that happens too sometimes, right, in movies where it's like think of The Room, as a great example, right, where they just get a new actor to play the same part right through the film. And I thought maybe that's what happened, but when I looked at the credits I found out no, she was a separate character, and he was just sleeping with both of them, and it wasn't even like he was cheating on anybody. He was just I'm having a sex scene here, I'm having a sex scene there, and it's almost like the sex scenes were padding out the action, right? It was like we can't have too much. Very, very
strange, and like the relationships between the characters as well. It's just like there's characters that just show up, and you're like, well, who's this, and what's their relation, and it's just ridiculous. I don't know, like it's an odd duck of a film in that. It's like they just kept shooting action scenes and more action scenes and more action scenes.
Yeah.
But there's no connective tissue, no story really. So I mean, in that regard, there's no fat in this movie.
Right. Yeah.
It's all killer, no filler. There's just nothing. It's 100% what anybody renting a movie at that time was looking for. They were looking for nudity. And they were looking for guys that were buff, which you definitely get. The main actor is jacked as hell.
Right.
And lots of tough talking. And the only thing it doesn't have is like cool cars.
Yes.
All the cars are super dumpy in the movie.
Even the limo in the movie was that.
Yeah. Like they're all like, none of them are like, the most impressive car in the entire movie is probably the Pontiac Fiero that's in it for like a minute.
Yeah.
Like that's the hottest car in the whole thing. All these guys, they've got the hard bodies, but they don't have the cars to match. Like it's just so in that strip club, man.
Yeah.
What a sleazy, gross looking place. And and also the stripping in that scene too is just like, yikes. Like not attractive.
No. And I think that's another thing, I think from Amir's standpoint, is him trying to understand American culture and American films. That strip club scene, and then also the striptease scene for Zadar's girlfriend giving him the striptease. Both of those scenes go on way longer than they needed to. And,
yes.
But I think that's because he didn't understand culturally, like how long those should have been going on for. That, when do you stop that? And maybe he went to a strip club and
for sure. Like, and he must have known somebody, because that was a real strip club. Like there's and those are real strippers. And then the actress giving Zadar striptease, maybe you should have told her to cool out with the pearls. It's like, it's like, I don't know about like the whole like pearl thing you got going on there. Like that's just something not really attractive Leave the pearls alone. Just put them down.
Right, which makes you think Zadar wasn't in the scene for that as much, because his reactions to that were not necessarily what you would be making if you were witnessing witnessing that.
Yeah, I think I read on the Internet Movie Database, which for whatever that's worth,
Yeah.
that the scene involving him with the actress that he actually is like having the sex scene with, that she really didn't want to,
Hmm.
and like was like intimidated by Zadar, and was just like put off by the whole thing, and like required like she had to like drink before
Oh
she
no.
did the scene, because she just was like super uncomfortable but did it anyway, like ugh.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, Zadar is just like, and there is a sense that like Zadar's, I mean, I get Zadar's like playing a character, but yeah, it was, you could kind of see that she was not into it.
yeah, like, but
Yeah.
he's intense, right? Like
Yeah.
when
Oh
he's in
yeah.
character, he's in character and he's intense, and like, he I don't know, he's quite a bit bigger than her. um by all accounts, though, like I said, I've never heard a bad word about him, like
Yeah.
ever. Like I read a lot of a lot of interviews with people talking about Zadar, because went through a period of being like super interested in him, and everybody said that he was just a really sweet guy and was like enthusiastic and like a consummate professional. So I think I don't, but maybe it was just like the intensity of the scene as well, and just who knows,
Yeah.
who knows. Just an odd assortment of colorful characters in wild outfits, and lots of people saying "sons of bitches."
Yes.
That's a favorite of his. He loves having characters say "you sons of bitches." Um, like that's like the worst thing that you could say or something.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know. I watching it again. I need to watch Killing American Style again, but
Yeah.
I remember watching Killing American Style and being really put off by the sexual assaults.
Yes.
Like it's not fun.
No.
Like it's not Samurai Cop and Young Rebels fun because it's about a home invasion, and
Yeah.
it's like it's just like an extra level of ick, and
Yeah.
it's just not, it's not the same. It's
No.
really, it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
The sexual assault aspect of it really lowers the fun factor considerably. But I think I've only seen Killing American Style once, so I feel like I need to see it again. But watching Young Rebels again, I just reconfirms the fact that it is a really fun movie. It delivers exactly what you want it to.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Because I saw Killing American Style more recently, and I can say that for sure. Like, it's the kind of thing that one makes it so you can't use it as a bad movie night movie with mixed company. You know what I mean? Like if the people that are watching that movie with you are not, that you're not sure kind of how they're going to feel. Yeah, the sexual assault makes it difficult. Yeah, there's the fact
And
that there's a kid.
understandably so. I mean, and again,
Exactly.
but the
Yeah.
movie was supposed to be intense. It wasn't
Right.
supposed to be a so bad it's good movie. It was
Right.
supposed to
Exactly.
be taken seriously. And in that context, like, yes, that makes them more villainous, but for our purposes, it's
Right.
not, it's just not as fun.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Now, one quick thing I want to say, kind of about kind of a side note about this movie. The character, so the actor's name was William T. Amos, who played the character of Terry, one of the goons. He was kind of, I think he was the goon, who's kind of like had the goatee and kind of the duster, kind of the smaller eyes.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, he did a movie in 2022 called Trailblazers, that was directed and written by Antonio Sabato Jr. Has David Chokichi in it, also Michael Dudikoff, Costas Mandylor, even Ron Moss from Hard Ticket to Hawaii. The thing is, the movie, it doesn't look like it's come out. And I was looking in the IMDb trivia, and somebody put in the trivia that Sabato Jr. and his production company were not paying the crew. And as of June of 2022, so as of last month, they still have not paid the crew. So,
Oh.
interesting side note that like this could have been an interesting movie, but yeah, Sabato Jr. I mean, if that's if that trivia is correct, and that would explain why the movie isn't coming out, possibly.
Well, and Antonio Sabato Jr., who also had his own direct-to-video brief career where he was like in a handful of movies.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that it might be 2022, but low-budget nonsense is still happening. Like that's the kind of stuff that you would think of happening in like the 80s and 90s and kind of the Wild West world of direct-to-video stuff. Yeah, it's still happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's still happening, and you could still have a wild cast like that. That's man, that's nuts. Like way to like completely ruin any possibility of like convincing people to make movies with you again, because that goes, the one thing that I've learned from watching all these movies, for intentionally going through all these ridiculous films, is that they're like a chain. They're all interconnected. Like this actor was in that movie, this guy directed this movie. Like it's a very small world. You could do like the 6 degrees of separation of any of these people, and it would be a huge web, right? Like, you've got Harold Diamond, who was in Gypsy. Well, he was also in the Andy Sedaris movies. Well, William Smith was in Seven, and he was also in all these other movies. And it's just like all these people are very much so very connected to each other. It doesn't take much. Like they all work with each other. There's only so many actors that are willing to make just absolutely nothing to make these types of movies. There's only so many directors that make them. It's a much smaller world than I ever thought it was. And it wasn't until I really started watching them that I realized how very it wouldn't be hard to get a bad name and completely get shut out. Because all these people do actually know each other, because they work a lot. Like, especially all these actors, they crank out a ton of films a year. So they work with a lot of people, and it's a lot of the same people. And if you are a director that doesn't get the project done, if it never gets released, then no one's going to work with you. If you are a director that is like abusive, that's going to get around really fast. And so it speaks well of when I see someone like Shervan, who works with the same actors over and over and over again. That speaks well of him, and it also speaks well of the actors, I think.
Yeah. I mean, so one of I know fellow blogger Ryan Kenner had a site called Movies in the Attic. I think it was him. I shouldn't maybe I shouldn't attested to him because I don't remember. But I think he was saying that like that was what happened to Lauren Avedon, is that he got kind of a bad reputation. That he may have kind of been a little bit of a hardo when it came to the action scenes or something like that. But he didn't get as many roles as he might have wanted to as a result of that. Though looking at his IMDb bio, he's got quite a bit of stuff. So maybe that wasn't the case. But it makes sense. I mean, it also explains, like you said, Shervan having the same cast. I mean, Wynorski, Fred Olen Ray, a lot of these guys work with the same people over and over again.
Right. Andy Sedaris, my God, like every single one of his movies have the same actors in them. So it speaks well, in my opinion, of the actors, because the director won't work with them again if they're abusive or like it's too difficult.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, if Robert Zadar was impossible to work with, Shervan wouldn't work with him. He wouldn't have put him in 3 of his movies, right? Like
exactly.
So it's to me it's a very good sign to see that. It makes me feel like, I don't know, in a weird way, it makes me feel like okay with watching it, because frankly with the Me Too movement, we've learned that a lot of people are dirtbags.
Yes. Yeah.
And
exactly.
I feel like on the really low budget, really low end level, I would like to think that there's no room for that. That like if someone is like an abusive jerk, that it's like, listen, there's three different actors that are all willing to take this amount of money that I'm willing to pay. I don't have to take you.
Yeah.
Right. And you're not really going to help me sell the movie. anyway, so I don't really care whether you're in it. And the same goes for directors. Like actors won't work. Like I don't think that all those actors and actresses would have worked for Andy Sedaris over and over and over again
Yeah.
if he was a horrible human being.
Right. And I think the story, I think that Donna Spear talked about, in her case, 'cause she had really bad alcoholism, that she was, I think, in Hard Ticket to Hawaii, I think it was, that she was like having trouble standing up and getting through her scenes, and Sedaris and his wife actually kind of took care of her, kind of got her rides back and forth to places, kind of got her sober, and kind of helped her through her sobriety in terms of making the film. So I think it's a great point there, that like Donna Spear, I think she was treated really well by Sedaris, and of course she ends up making a ton of movies with him,
Right.
that, which are all really, really a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I mean, that's another reason why I like the Amir Shervan movies, is because you do see the same faces popping up over and over again, and there's a fun factor with that, and it's the same thing with all the Sedaris movies as well. And there's plenty of other directors out there who continually work with the same people over and over again, and there's something I don't know, familiar about that makes them more endearing to watch.
Yeah, that's a great point. And maybe it's a great place to leave this, I think, is that this is a fun movie. This is a fun watch. I think, like you said, I think after Samurai Cop, I think if you haven't seen Samurai Cop before, you probably should see that one first from Shervan. But I think this is a good second one. I think Young Rebels was a lot of fun. I think even like the scenes that could be more macabre, like when a guy's getting attacked with a chainsaw, all
Yeah.
it really is just like kind of what magenta paint that's being splattered around, and some yelling, which is that's all kind of fun in there, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's a blast, and really what you're looking for if you're gonna do a group watch is a movie that has a lot of action,
Yeah.
a lot of action and goofy things that you can pick up on and notice. Silly dialogue. This movie has all of them. It is not as good as Samurai Cop. I will definitely say that, but it's much better than Killing American Style. It's better than Gypsy, and for my money, I like it better than Hollywood Cop, although Hollywood Cop definitely has its moments as well. And it's if you want to go back to the well, it's a great one to visit with your friends. It's readily available on Tubi, which is great. It doesn't even cost you anything. You can just like fire it up. So it definitely it hits that sweet spot of tons of cheap action and just nonsense. It's great. It's a lot of fun. I wholeheartedly recommend Young Rebels as a very respectable number two in his filmography.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a lot of fun. I think people definitely enjoy it if they haven't really been dipping into more of Shervan's, which I hadn't. Like I said, I hadn't really until between Awful Awesome Action 1 and the guys that come up and talking about Shervan's films. I really hadn't gotten past Samurai Cop, and I think it's really worth. And that was the main reason why I wanted to have you on to talk Shervan, because I figure seeing the way you discuss him in that book, and I just it felt like the perfect felt like the perfect guest to come on and talk about him.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I love talking Shervan, and I love talking to you. It's fun. It's fun talking about these movies, and I feel like, and that's really the purpose of my books, and it's the purpose of what you're doing as well, is to shed a light on films that often get passed over or completely are audiences are completely unaware of that even exist. Right. It's we're both doing our part to try to connect films that we've discovered that we think are worthy of attention and discussion, and try to connect them with the audience, trying to bring them along and put a spotlight on them. So I definitely appreciate what you do, because when it comes to action movies, there really isn't like this big fan base like there is with horror. There are no action magazines. There are no action conventions, and it's really a shame because there's as much to dig into with direct to video action as there is with horror. I mean, to me, I think it's a wonderful genre to dive into, but it is one that benefits from a guide such as yourself to help point out. It's easy to get your fingers burned.
Yes.
Just like it is with horror. It's really, really easy to jump in and be enthusiastic and then get burned 3 or 4 times and say, "Oh, I give up."
Yeah. Yeah, and you make a great point too, because when I started the blog, I was going to cover all aspects of direct to video, but it was the action ones that were getting the most traction. And I think it's exactly like you talked about, that there isn't that kind of ecosystem out there. A low budget horror movie a lot of times will have 20 critic reviews, whereas like, a low budget, I think Young Rebels has 8 critic reviews on Amazon, on IMDb. So it's that's kind of the difference that you're seeing there, is that I think people were looking for that kind of thing, and so like my site has kind of turned action because that's where people are commenting, people are coming, because there's so many places to go for horror, and not as many for action. And I think a few others are kind of in a similar boat, that it's just sort of like, yeah, we just sort of ended up here in the action realm. But it is a lot of fun, and I think you're right, like it does deserve a similar, I don't know, spotlight that horror has.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much there. There's a lot. I mean, my gosh, action movies go back a long way, and they are, as far as awful awesome movies goes, they're like the blue chip, right? Like they're the most bankable, they're not a gamble usually, because as long as it delivers the action, you definitely get your money's worth. Whereas like horror movies can be dreadfully boring.
Yeah.
Action movies usually are not. I
Yeah.
mean, it's pretty dang easy to fill a book of hilariously over the top action movies. It's a lot harder to fill it with horror. Let me tell you, it is actually harder, because there's just so many fun action movies out there, right? Like, and they just keep coming.
Right.
Like they're still being made that are just so much fun. One of my more recent discoveries that it's like a new favorite of mine is Ballistica.
Oh
Oh,
yes.
oh my gosh, hilarious. So good. So good.
Yeah, that was an Asylum joint, wasn't it?
Possibly. All I know is that like he literally says like you can study the art of ballistic all your life and not even know what it is. And it's like, oh my gosh, I love this movie. It's got Andrew Divoff with like
Yeah.
a horrible accent and just, oh, it's so good. It's
Yes.
so good. And just this past weekend I watched King of Kickboxers 2, or also called
Yes.
Fighting Spirit,
Yep.
with Lauren Avedon, bringing
Yep.
back Lauren Avedon. So much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there is so much out there. And I think, coming back to your book, Awful Action Volume 1, I think what's so great about it is, I think for people that kind of like, okay, I've seen this and this, where should I go next? It's just a lot of fun to kind of go through your book and see that. And I think, your newest one, the horror one, I think does the same thing. And I think too, for people out there that are looking to buy, I mean, yeah, I think people have these big collections of, but physical media is coming back. And I think your books are a great kind of investment in a collection. Like if you're going to spend the money on a Blu-ray or something, spending it to get your book and adding that to your collection, I think is an equally good investment.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, the whole point was just that I was having so much fun watching these movies with my friends, and I realized that although I do have some books that cover some of these films, there weren't any books that specifically covered films that were fun to watch with a group,
Yeah.
that were hilariously bad, whatever, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
These films that were made by people outside of your normal filmmaker, like people who are just out there making wild movies that have a very distinct personality, that may have been failures when they released. Like they're still worthy of discovery, they're worthy of watching. There is an audience, and I'm trying very hard to connect that audience to those films, because um, unlike horror, there's boutique labels that put out a ton of horror, and you can just like buy stuff from those boutique labels. we're getting a little bit more of that with the action stuff. Like I can't believe that Road to Revenge got a Blu-ray release and Action USA. And so like
Right. Yes.
we are getting there. It is happening, and I'd like to see more of it because there's so much awesome stuff out there that's just waiting to be discovered, that a filmmaker put a ton of energy and heart and money and time, and they probably weren't able to find the audience that they were hoping to find. Like they didn't make as much money off of their films as they were hoping to make. And there is an audience out there, and I'm really trying to connect the two because there's so much fun to be had. So much fun to be had by watching these movies.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. Now, for people listening, the newest book is Awful Awesome Horror Volume 2. But actually, I think if people if they go search for your name, Jacob Gustafson, on Amazon, or look up Awful Awesome action, horror, or sci-fi, they'll find kind of a link, and you'll get to all the books. There's currently 4 out right now, so you've got a two horror, sci-fi, and an action.
Yes, and I will have a volume 2 of action and sci-fi. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to release those. Maybe another one, maybe in the spring. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to get them released, but they are written. They're ready to go. They're just being edited by Chris, my editor right now. But I've already got the art, and I'm currently writing volume 3 of each, which is like about a third of the way done. So volume 3 will still be quite a ways away. But I'm still going. I'm not done yet. I've written, I don't know, well over 700 reviews of these types of movies. And by the time I'm done with all three volumes of all 3 genres, I'll have over 900. And then I'm like toying with like in the idea of like at some point putting together like an omnibus of all of them, and then like throwing in another 100 so that I have like 1,000 reviews in one book. So
yeah, I think that's fantastic.
I'm definitely still passionate about it. I'm still watching this stuff. I'm still finding them. And not that I need to tell your audience, but man, Tubi is a gold mine. It's a minefield. It is a major minefield, but yes. there is definitely gold in those hills.
Yes. And I think what people can do then, I think on Amazon, they can follow your author page. So then they'll get updates kind of knowing like, okay, when the new one comes out, they'll have that there. But at the very least, I think, people should get out there and buy your books because they're a great resource. I've got to get your newest one. I got to get the horror one myself because I've got the other 3. So that's going to be my next book purchase for sure.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the push. It's just definitely a passion project for me. It's not something that I'm out there trying to like make a bunch of money. I just want the books to get out there in the world, mostly not to promote myself. I'm not interested in that. I just want people to watch these movies. I really I'm that guy who's super enthusiastic and like gleefully enjoying these films, and I just want to grab you and say, "Oh my gosh, have you seen this one? It is so wild, it's ridiculous, it's fun. You have to watch this movie." Because there's only so much time in the world. We don't have much time. There's no time for mediocrity. I'm trying to sift through. I'll sift through all the mediocre and the boring and whatever, and I will try to rescue the ones that are very much so worth your time. So, it's a wonderful thing to be able to get people together and watch these types of movies and have a blast, have a hoot. Movies are a unifying thing. They bring people from all walks of life together, and you can all enjoy it. And all the differences that we may have, they all disappear when you're watching Young Rebels and watching Robert Z'Dar get a striptease.
That's perfect. I think that's a perfect place to leave it. I think that's fantastic.
We're all uncomfortable when Z'Dar gets a striptease, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, no matter what your age is or how you vote. Everybody's uncomfortable by Robert Z'Dar getting a striptease.
But what's great is when you watch it in a group, everybody can be uncomfortable together, right?
That's
like
right. It's a bonding
you're
experience.
sharing it. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you again, Jacob, for coming on. Again, the book is Awful Awesome Horror Volume 2, but also Awful Awesome Action Volume 1. I think is the one kind of, from an action standpoint is out there as well.
Yes, and keep your eyes peeled for volume 2. I think the next one I'm planning on publishing is Action. That will be the next one.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you again for coming on, and thank you everybody for listening. Thank you everybody for listening. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Hey, Nissan, how do you get to the top?
Calculating. Proceed to 1959. Take a hard left in East Africa at the 71 Safari Rally. Veer right for 19 off-road championships in the Baja Desert. Proceed towards Moab. Take the trail to Hell's Revenge. Includes steep incline. Continue for the next 1,000,000 miles.
Where to first again?
60 years, millions of miles, and the capability to take you anywhere. This is the new Nissan.